You know, after being off the hard drugs for like a solid month, I said to myself, okay, I'm just gonna go get one. And what I mean by that was I was gonna get some heroin and some crack, you know, and I'm just gonna get a little bit. Well, that little bit turned into an entire weekend long bender of no sleep, partying 24/7 throughout the weekend, using drugs, drinking. Monday morning comes, I gotta be at work early in the morning. I get there, I haven't slept. I'm sleep deprived. I'm still half drunk from the night before. I'm falling asleep at my desk. And my boss says, hey, go home, clean yourself up. Don't let this happen again. And I told him, I looked him square in the eyes. And I truly meant it. And I said, this will never happen again.
I did everything I could to keep my house of cards intact. I kept a job. I tried to keep up on appearances and be where I was supposed to be. But really, behind the scenes, I was just living a double life. I was slowly killing myself. And I imagine that all the people I thought I was fooling knew, at least to some degree, exactly what was going on.
And I got to a point to where I was like at utter despair. You know, I was just existing, you know, ready to die every day, you know. And December 19th, 2021, you know, I remember sitting in my car and I had a gun in my head and I was ready to kill myself.
I know it's not true. I mean, both of them had told me what a wonderful childhood they had, what a wonderful parents we were, but I still feel like we just didn't do something quite right. I mean, it just seems that way to me, even though I know in my mind it's not really true, but I still have that feeling.
Born and raised in Northern Virginia, coming from a good family, loving parents, older brother, older sister, a very loving home.
He really looked up to his brother and just did basically everything his brother did.
My brother Troy was the coolest man on earth, I thought, you know? And so I wanted to be just like him.
Troy just got hooked on that oxy from breaking his ankle. And then Jason got right in there with him.
Well, I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia in Bucks County. I had two loving parents and an older sister. But I just, you know, thought I was just carrying on with life, started working. But meanwhile, the drugs and alcohol were just constantly ramping up and had been over this whole time. I think it really kind of blew up once I stopped playing soccer. I went from being on the dean's list at PBU to essentially failing out.
My grandmother had 17 kids. My mom was the youngest. She had me when she was 15. My mom was like in and out of my life. You know, it was at a point to where I was ashamed of her because she was like the neighborhood drunk. You know, and I saw what alcohol could do to a person, you know, just seeing what it done to my mom, and all my uncles drank, you know, and they stayed in the house and it was very abusive. When I turned 11, my mom was raped. One of the neighbors came and got my grandmother, myself, and my uncle from the house and said somebody had drugged my mom behind a building. So we went up there. It was kind of like dark, and, you know, and I witnessed this, you know, at 11 years old.
Our daughter had a horrible accident and, you know, totally tears apart your family.
December of 2009, my sister was walking across a major highway in Newport Richey. She got struck by a vehicle going very fast, probably like 60, 70 miles per hour. At the time when I go to see her in the hospital, just waking up from medical-induced coma, I did not know how to handle those emotions.
So that's what Jason and Troy did. They just
that's what
really
started.
got into drugs. Not that they weren't in it before, but they really went downhill. And that was in 2009.
Got to my first assigned job at Marcus Hook at the Sunoco refinery, which was like, I didn't know it, but one of like the really sought after jobs, and wound up failing my first drug test at my first job site there. And that was the final gust of wind that blew my house of cards down.
To experience the rage and the helplessness from an 11-year-old watching this. I went home. Like I said, I had 10 uncles in the house, older, drank, in the streets. And I retrieved a gun. I followed him to kind of like a secluded area. And I shot him and I killed him.
Had to move back in with my parents, who, sure, they knew a little something of what was going on. Obviously they seen the signs, but they did not know the extent of my addiction at the time. And also, their daughter was just in this horrible accident.
Yeah, but we didn't know right away. That's another thing too. You're not aware of what's really going on. They're very good at hiding it all.
We'll face it. The first days, the money off my dresser, I couldn't figure it out. And then Mom would miss a 20 in her purse, and all of a sudden, what's going on?
And it would progress and progress back to resorting to having to, steal money out of my mom's purse, or, stealing her credit cards. The addiction had a full grip on me, and I was just completely on a chase. I was constantly chasing that high. I was just stuck in this vicious cycle of just, no matter how fast I would run, I just could never reach that first high. I just got to the point where I hated myself. I didn't want to kill myself, but I did not want to live anymore.
At 13, they sentenced me to a youth development center until I was 17. When I got out, me and a group of guys was walking, and another group of guys was, across the street, and a shootout ensued. The crowd dispersed after, a bunch of shots were fired, and I was walking up on the person and thinking that it was one of the guys from the other side, and when I got up on him, it was a 3-year-old child. She had been shot in the back, and it came out of her heart. She was from Baltimore. She had came to visit her grandma. Even though I wasn't the one that did the shooting, I was there. So I went to homicide, and I told them, what I saw and what had happened. The homicide detective came, and she charged me with it. She charged me with felony murder and murder. The DA offered me 2 life sentences, one for the felony murder and one for the murder. And I called on him for help. Despite not having a relationship for me, he delivered me. Upon the end of my trial, the judge granted a direct dismissal, and I was acquitted of all the charges. A year later, I was introduced to heroin, a whole different monster. I mean, like it takes your soul.
After a few days, I got the phone call that let me know what their decision was and that I wasn't welcome back. So I found myself very quickly in my second rehab. Again, this was a 28 or 30-day program, and quickly found myself back doing the same things, same habits, hiding things and sneaking around, this and that. And sure enough, got found out, got confronted, and it wasn't a big mystery. And so I had a conversation with the man who ran the house. His name was Elvin, and he rightfully so told me I couldn't stay there. I was out of options. He said that he knew a great place in Florida. My immediate reaction was absolutely not. I was just adamantly against it until I wasn't.
So one morning, my mom was like, hey, what are you going to do with your life? She was like, you got to figure something out. And a small, still whisper in the back of my head said, you need help, go to rehab. You know, and I didn't know what it was at the time. I didn't think about it. I just said, Mom, I need help. I need to go to rehab. She immediately says, oh, great. I just heard this public service announcement on Moody Radio where there's dope, there's hope. Give Dynamic Life a call. I did no research whatsoever. I didn't Google this place. I didn't go on their website. I didn't ask any questions when I called. I literally just called up and said, I need help. What do I got to do?
He was not for it at all. I mean, he was like, I don't believe this. This is not gonna work. I'm not for this. I'm not gonna go there. You know, he was very negative about it, very negative, but it didn't take him long.
Get that faith-based stuff out of my face. I want nothing to do with it. I can't believe I'm even at a faith-based program, right?
And I got to a point to where I was like at utter despair. December 19th, 2021. You know, I remember sitting in my car and I had a gun to my head and I was ready to kill myself. I had a friend that was in Vero. I had never heard of Vero, that was in recovery down here. And she had been trying to get me to come down here for a year. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I didn't think that was in the cards for me. You know, I didn't think that was for me. But at that very moment when I was sitting in my car ready to take my life, you know, God said, go. I called and I asked somebody how to get to Florida. And they was like, get on 75 South and just keep going. A week later, I was here at Dynamic. You know, what a game changer.
It was the darkest and longest, run that I had been on that ultimately ended in my car being repossessed, an eviction notice. I was homeless, jobless, unemployable, truly my rock bottom. And the only place I knew I had a chance at survival was back at Dynamic. And I really just crawled back here. I was smoking crack and using heroin daily. Finally just got to this place of, okay, well, nothing's gonna change if nothing changes.
I was ready. I was finally just done and I was ready to do something different. I got down on my knees and I prayed for the first time since I was a child. And I said, God, if you exist, I need your help. I want to live a drug and alcohol-free life.
It was a miracle. He said it. You got to say it. I love him, man.
I think I had probably one of the biggest growth curves of my life in the 16 months here. I was really able to just find like a new level of peace I hadn't had before. Discovered a love for gardening I never knew that I would have. And it became like just this really cool season in my life of maturing and transforming in ways that I didn't even know I needed to.
You know, I'm used to chaos and dysfunction and, and just to come down here was like something totally different. I never knew such peace existed, because like I said, I was born into chaos, and to finally experience that, the contrast was like, unbelievable. They tell you when you come down here and you get into recovery and that, you will get a life beyond your imagination, and at first I thought that was a bunch of crap, Today I am a believer. Sometimes I still can't believe it. Sometimes I ride in my car and I just cry and I just look, I still can't believe it.
It was April 10th, 2019. I found out that my older brother had passed away from a drug overdose.
He just couldn't do it. Sad.
And when I got this news, I was actually at work at the front desk at the hotel. I broke down. I mean, I fell on my knees, sobbing, just in complete breakdown. And they said, go home, take as much time as you need, whatever, we got this, do what you got to do. So Pastor Kyle and Adriana, who's now my wife, girlfriend at the time, came to my work and told me that awful news, and I broke down, and we went over to Cracker Barrel. I had to use the restroom. I go into the bathroom, and I literally just said to God, I said, God, I need to hear from you right now. I need your strength. I need to hear from you. And sorry, one second. God spoke to me. And he said, no, your brother wants you to know. Excuse me for a second. You do not have to end up like I did. Keep going. That's all it took. I heard those words, and I just kept going.
You got to do the things that you don't want to do. You have to do the things that make you uncomfortable. I truly believe that Dynamic is a place that is anointed by God. But just the lives that have been changed, the impact that Dynamic has in this community and in the lives of the guys I've personally been able to see and in my own is nothing short of miraculous, is nothing short of anointing of and by God. I've been married for almost 8 months now. I actually met my now wife while I was still living here in 2020. Me and her own our own business. We've been in business for a little over a year, which has been great. We don't have any kids yet, but want to and plan on doing that in the next couple years, looking to buy a house. I'm just really excited for not only where God's brought me at this point in my life, but just where he's going to take me. I'm just starting what I feel like to be this brand new chapter and season in my life again. So it's refreshing and exciting and hopeful.
Dynamic Life was like my foundation, and it introduced me to the NAAA programs. You know, it introduced me to the facilities and the churches and whatever, like going to Freedom and going to Recovery Church and other churches, and I built a better relationship with God. And despite all of that, you know, in the day, what I do is I share the message of hope. You know, that if He's done it for me, that He can do it for anybody. You know, and I try to do that on a daily basis. And I found my purpose. You know, some people be on the earth 60, 70 years and don't know why they're here. You know, I know why I'm here. I'm here to make a difference. I speak at youth summits, I go to school, I speak at schools, at churches, at meetings, or whatever. The greatest gift you can give any man is the gift of hope. You know, and I try to do that all the time because God gave me hope, and I know it's real.
So I'm super blessed in the fact that just after I moved out at Dynamic Life, I was actually hired as staff in August of 2019. I got to become a staff member. And so today, we have a beautiful home, and I have my wife and 2 children, and I'm a family man. You know, once a street-dwelling junkie, and now, you know, a man of God and a family man.
Oh, no, I could see the peace, the peace in him, because he knew that he is saved by Jesus, and he firmly believes that.
Oh yeah, he's nonstop. Those kids. He's just a good dad.
You know, the house, the wife, the children, the car, the job, all amazing things that God has blessed me with through my recovery journey. And it is a journey. The most important thing that I'm grateful for and I don't take for granted is the peace of mind. I have a peace today which transcends my understanding, because my outer circumstances may not be great at times, and I have issues and troubles and problems, but I still have an internal joy that only comes from the Lord. And I no longer have to be on that chase. I no longer am in that vicious cycle of addiction. And that's one of the greatest things of recovery, is the peace that I have today.